Hello, Elena Martín. It is the second time I'm having you on the show. Always fun to chat with you, Elena. You're a bastion of the paddle world. You are a great paddle player, certainly in your youth, professional, and today you are one of the co-authors and the partner at PwC to do the 2025 Global Padel Report. In your own words, Elena, how would you like to describe yourself?
Well, thank you for having me again here. It's always a pleasure to share this time with you. Uh, I think I define myself as an ex-player, now kind of fun player and consultant. Yes.
Well, we have yet to get on the court. Yet we've met, we've got close. Next time we're gonna have to play. Anyway, so the Global Padel Report just came out, and I'm betting that you had fun doing the calculation, or someone in your team, to come up with this 2.5 hour global phenomenon, whereby you have a new club being open every 2.5 hours worldwide. So having tracked the industry for so long, what does the rapid pace of expansion of paddle as we're seeing it tell us about the maturation of the sport? Or is it, versus the hype?
I had to do the numbers when you said that figure. But yes, having tracked the industry for the past 4 years, I'd say at some times or in some geographies we've experienced periods of unusually rapid growth. But now overall trends reflects a sustainable maturation process. I think the sport has moved from the initial novelty, some, let's say, uncertain steps, to now showing a steady, consistent expansion and establishing a solid foundation, I would say. I think I mentioned that at the presentation, that now we kind of understand the ups and downs that we've gone through, and now I see this sport evolving into a mature sport with a strong community support, the infrastructure being established. So going over this simply temporary enthusiasm.
Yeah, with you, the presentation you're referring to, of course, the Paddle World Summit 2025, held in your wonderful city of Barcelona. Yeah, so what I noticed in one of the graphs, you have Sweden as even being more mature than Spain. Perhaps it's just because you couldn't put them on top of each other. But it does bring up this notion of what is the potential for saturation. When you've got, I think in Madrid, what is it, 30,000 people per court, something like that. Whereas in many other parts of the world, we're talking, millions of people per court almost. So when do you know that the maturation is going to hit? I don't think there are that many countries that are going to have as many people as Spain playing. I mean,
Yes.
unless.
So this is an exercise that we tried to do when we did the first Global Padel Report. And basically, we tried to find what are the factors that are defining the maximum capacity that a country has in terms of players/courts. And the factors that define that are obviously, one, the population; two, the population that has, let's say, spare time and spare money. So it's not only about population, but also about having the time and the money to spend on, let's say, leisure. And then the penetration of sports, the penetration of racket sports, more specifically. So that's why we showed that graph where, so Sweden is in, if you calculate that number of that theoretical level, like maximum number of people or maximum number of courts, we think that Sweden went over that number actually. Whereas Spain, although we have a lot of players and a lot of courts, we haven't reached that maximum yet. And actually, I was pretty surprised this year because I was expecting not a lot of courts being built in Spain, and still the manufacturers are reporting courts being built in Spain. Not only refurbishments, which I expected, obviously, but also new clubs, let's say.
Yeah. Well, just to go back to some fact checking on my case, I was talking about the numbers of courts per person. I was just checking right as you spoke. In Madrid, it's 33 courts per 100,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
In Manchester, I just did a report. It's around 2 courts per 100,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And in London it's basically the same, so that there's still an enormous amount of growth, assuming the people get into it and start buying into it. And you wonder, we were going to talk about the USA a little bit later, but I was just in the US and they were talking about how pickleball in some places is now on the decline. People are sort of moving away from it. It's for some it's too injury much, because it's for a lot of people who play are not quite as athletic as you say, maybe like a tennis
Mm-hmm.
player or even a paddle player or squash player. And then they also don't find it as exciting. Whereas I think paddle has more athleticism, more excitement in it, and therefore can be more attractive. Maybe I could just jump to another question, which is you also identify that there are 92% retention. Is it 92 or
Mm-hmm.
90? That you have a 92% return rate once one person is played one time. And that seems like an amazing amount of stickiness. I don't know if there's any other sport that can get people addicted so quickly.
I think that it is like tremendous, and the main reason of this stickiness, I would say, it's because it's it's incredibly fun. Uh, let me tell you a story. My 13-year-old daughter, she plays tennis at a competition level. I think I told you.
Yeah,
She trains 15 hours per week, competition. I mean, the whole thing.
serious.
And last Easter, we spent a week in Malaga, and she played for the first time paddle in a family kind of easy match, right? My other daughter, my husband, just people coming in and out. And she had a blast. She said, "This is so much fun, Mom." She said, "I have to run much less than I do when I play tennis, and I'm so good at it." She's obviously not that good, but this sense of enjoyment and competence is pretty difficult to beat.
Yeah,
And
that
also,
sense of achievement.
yeah, exactly. And also, you were comparing it to pickleball. I haven't played pickleball. I'm sorry, but I think paddle has this point in between pickleball and tennis where it it has some degree of a little bit more exercise than you do in pickleball, as far as
Sure,
I understand,
100%.
but not as demanding as tennis.
Tennis.
So if you're fit but you don't feel like doing a lot of exercise, but rather doing a social plan. Or if you're not that fit, like it's a perfect match. And also it's very social. That pickleball has to, that you're four in a court, you chit chat. The sport is pretty fast. If you compare it to tennis, for example, in tennis you spend a lot of time picking up balls because they're far away. Whereas in paddle they're, well, mostly in people's pockets. Otherwise you'd step on them.
Yeah,
So
and
I
that's even more true for the little kids, where going to get a ball is such a long distance, and they don't pop it out of the court quite as many times. And I would say I would add the other piece, which is that for the people who want a good workout, and you have 3 other equal level players at a higher level, you can get a serious, proper cramp making workout. And it
sure.
doesn't have to be 35 degrees outside. It can be, I mean, I've recorded a 1,800 calorie game of paddle, which is tantamount to maybe an hour on a squash court, or, big hour on a squash court, or big hour on a tennis court when you're playing at a very high level. But
Mhm.
anyway, so that's another good thing. So it doesn't cap you just because it's easy. It doesn't cap you up here.
I totally agree. And when I played seriously, let's say a lot of people told me, "Oh, but it's you don't exercise a lot." And I said, "Okay, you come and you see what we do, right?" Um, But for the stickiness part, let's say I was referring to most the general population, not the ones that play it seriously or at a high level or etc.
And just going back to the family outing, I'm just going to have to guess this, that your younger daughter played with your husband and you played with your older daughter. Was that the even team?
Actually, we're 5, because I have the 2 daughters and my son. So one was out, and then every 4 games, one came in and another went out. And we tried not to repeat couples. So, it was
family mixing, as they say. All right.
Exactly.
So moving back to the report, you talk about the 50,000 courts. We've now passed that threshold, and you would say, having looked at it, what does this scale actually surprise you? And by the way, I'm just wondering, because in our last chat we did talk about Argentina. Is Argentina included? Have you managed to get the numbers for them? Because they seem to be only mildly included in the report.
Okay, to your first question. So yeah, the number is impressive, but does it surprise me? Not really. I'd say there's some large countries that have like now play a role alongside Spain, for example, Italy, France, Sweden, which was here some years ago. So I'm not really surprised by that. For me, the largest takeaway here was that, yeah, we're matching the forecast that we're matching.
Bravo for that, by the way.
No. I mean, every year I'm like, oh, I hope the number
exactly.
right.
24, 23, 25.
I hope what I said last year is going to happen. And like, to give you the other side of the coin, 50% of the courts are still Spain plus Italy, something like this. Yeah. So, meaning once Germany, the UK, and then the US, and obviously not so developed regions, other continents come after that. I mean, these numbers are going to be small in a short period of time. And then regarding Argentina, the thing is, we have taken into account Latin America in the data. We hadn't had them last year only like a rest of. Now we're going down a little bit year by year, trying to get more detail. I can't give you a number of courts in Argentina. We've worked here more with interviews, taking into account the International Padel Federation too, because data for Argentina is very difficult to track.
Yeah,
it's challenging for 2 reasons. One, there were a lot of courts built during the 80s, which, let's say, don't belong to anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and some of them may not be in use, meaning the walls are there, but they're not used anymore. So
yeah, there's no net or something.
To track both how many are there and whether they're used. We're going to do this effort. I talked to Playtomic this year, and we said we're going to do the effort. We're going to try to do the effort next year to have an acceptable figure, let's say something I have confidence in. But we did take it into account within Latin America.
Yeah, it's so difficult. I did have Viviana Corcuera on the podcast recently, and talking about Argentina and how it was sort of like basketball on the street corner in Argentina. It was just everywhere. And of course, they've had the economic problems, so they haven't been able to quite invest in these new fancy courts compared to just having, cement blocks on every corner. Yeah, so I get that. All right, so now we got the projection. You have 81,000 courts worldwide by 2027. You also suggest that USA will be the largest market even before 2030, at least as your graphic shows you. Well, as soon as US becomes on stream, you are going to be talking about a huge amount of new courts because of the volume, the size of that country. And when it gets going, it'll, you can imagine thousands of court per year, I suppose. That's how your number comes up?
I mean, the number comes up by doing this exercise for all the geographies, but obviously the big countries play a big role here. The US, I don't expect it to be, let's say, booming next year, so 2026, rather 2027. and on. And I wasn't aware that I said. I mean, I recall the graph that you're
I just looked at the
talking
squiggle,
about.
you know, I
Yeah,
just looked at
exactly,
the
exactly.
curve.
I like I didn't take that takeaway from the graph, but
Right.
yes, maybe. Um,
You know, I'm a
uh,
numbers guy sometimes.
yeah, I see. No, I see. You're getting into the details. It's fun when you prepare such a report and then you like send
Send
it
it to the
out, right?
world. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
exactly. And then you get feedback or
yeah,
WhatsApps or
yeah.
emails talking about small details that probably you didn't notice that we're sending some
Right.
message that you didn't highlight, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, I mean, the US is going to be one of the markets, obviously.
It's going to be exciting. My cousin, of course, is involved in Miami. He's just opened up a new club in Boca Raton, in one of the hubs. Of course, the Florida area, naturally, because it has the Latinos and it
Yeah.
has the beautiful weather. But they also do indoor courts, and I think that looking at your graphs about the number of
Mhm.
indoor courts to outdoor courts, it's still such a painful thought that in a country like Great Britain, where we know that it rains just a lot, that there are much as a greater as like 58% are outdoor as opposed to indoor, whereas even in Spain, you're well over 50% in indoor courts. So things to learn, eh?
I'm not surprised by that. And so here at the beginning, we also had a lot of outdoor. I
Yeah.
would say 100%. Everything was outdoor. Why? Because at the beginning, there's two reasons. One, it's less expensive to build an outdoor court. For the indoor court, you need to have like either the warehouse or like build the roof. And at the beginning, if you're unsure, money is not that much available, then you may try, even if occupation, which is the KPI for this business, may drop, especially in a country like the UK where it rains quite a lot. And the second one is sometimes at the beginning, there's substitution of courts. So if you have a tennis court, a tennis club, you can build a couple or three paddle courts where there's one tennis court, and let's say the activity license is valid. So what happens is these are usually not new clubs, not necessarily new clubs, but refurbished ones. Whereas in Spain, we started like that. But then when the sport boomed, everyone was building indoor courts. So at the beginning, everything was outdoor. And then uh, little by little, outdoor were being built. And I expect that will happen in the UK too. But now it's still, let's say, it's well known already. I think it's at the point where everybody knows what paddle is, or most of the population knows what paddle is. We call it like socially, it, uh, it grew socially, let's say. And the UK in that sense is being a benchmark because the investment is being carefully looked at, which may hinder a little bit growth, but establishing solid roots. And I think the indoor the indoor boom will come.
Yeah, I also think one other thing, because I was there, of course, there at the beginning of paddle in Spain, is that it was located essentially on the Costa del Sol. So lots of
Yeah.
sun and outdoors, and that was the hub back in the day of paddle. So it started outdoor and moved indoor. Um, anyway, the hope is that we get more indoor in the UK. You talk a lot about the UK. You have a specific page on them, and one of the things you look at is the gross monetary value.
Yeah.
And I was just, why did you look at only the court expenditure? My thinking is the paddle industry includes rackets, balls, clothing, apparel. I think that's what you did. It seems that your GMV is focused on
Mhm.
the club version, at least. But even for them, the accessories of the beer and those type of things add to the profitability and the opportunity for paddle in the UK or anywhere. So your focus on the paddle courts, is that because of Playtomic? And then secondly, look at the growth in the UK. What do you think is driving that sort of huge GMV in the UK?
Okay, to your first question, we're looking at the courts because it has taken, let's say, a massive effort to now be confident and be able to give detailed figures on each country and be, let's say, as I said, confident about them.
Yeah.
So, but we are planning to move onto other, so apparel, media even, so let's say the whole industry. And GMB was, let's say, what we were comfortable with
Right.
showing to the people. I talked to Playtomic the other day, and I was saying this isn't a report that's comprehensive, meaning in some consulting works we need to be comprehensive. Here we're not being comprehensive. We're being as good. So we're giving out everything that we have that we think is good, and we're confident. If we're not confident on that, because we are deciding what we're analyzing,
Of
if we're
course.
not confident on data, we're not releasing it. So that's basically the reason why, but we're moving in that direction. And regarding the GMB of the UK, so the first thing is, as I mentioned before, in the UK, investments are being made with a high level of financial scrutiny, meaning things are being done more professionally or more financially based than what I've seen in other geographies. This may be slowing down growth because the requirements are higher by the investors, but that's, let's say, cultural. It's something that's happening, but there's no regulation that's asking UK investors to do this differently from in other places. And so, because they're analyzing their projects better, the outcome is higher because it's evenly distributed higher. That's one thing. And the second thing is, so the club or the court business is at its core a real estate investment.
Sure.
And the UK has some of the highest real estate prices globally. So it's not surprising that GMB per court is also high, right? Because it's basically, it's not only the operations, but the underlying assets themselves that are expensive too. So I would say it's a combination of these two factors.
That's good. Those are great insights, Elena. Thank you for that. That's really cool. So listen up, folks in England. Let your risk tolerance go higher and get us more courts. But anyway, that. It needs to be profitable, so that makes sense. So switching away from the UK and the more mature markets, we're looking at the report. You've got a great growth. I indicated lots of, I would say, surprising countries. You mentioned Indonesia, Thailand, Tunisia, as opposed to the Swedens and Spains of the world. How do you assess which markets will have genuine staying power versus just an enthusiasm or hype or just a quick bubble?
So for these Asia Pacific countries that we identified, at this point, they're growing a lot compared to the baseline, which was basically inexistent. And at this point, it's most players are Western expats.
I see.
So it will take time before padel truly takes root with local communities. So I wouldn't dare to bet which of those countries will stay and will really root with, as I said, with locals, right? Sweden for me was a unique case, which explosive growth was driven by a combination which is not happening again. So I don't see that as an example either.
It's an outlier.
Yes, exactly. I think Europe now is, I mean, a no-brainer. Italy has grown, France is well established. We've got the players, the tournaments, the competitions, the federations. So Europe is a no-brainer. I think the US is starting to like position itself as the next new big market, and these Asia Pacific countries, we're seeing like, I don't know, 500% growth, right? But the base is so small and the base player is not local or not local enough. So we'll see.
Yeah, you do write about India having
Yep.
60 million people being potentially affluent enough to get into paddle. So there does seem to be some possibilities of local growth in that country in any event. Plus, they also don't have the, well, let's say, a more traditional version. Well, they do have traditional parts of society, but they have a lot more explosive, more open types of society. I'm thinking particularly of women, for example. And speaking of women, I mean, it's amazing. I just had Najwa Salhab on my podcast, who's she plays for the Saudi national team. Women in Muslim countries, basically, I would have had a priori that they weren't playing sports. That's certainly how it looks in London when you look at the traditional Muslims. But obviously in Saudi, in Dubai, you've got a lot of women playing. And I'm wondering, I suppose, in India and in Indonesia, where there are such a large Muslim communities, to what extent we're going to use paddle as a way to get women to be allowed to have fun and play sports.
Yeah, I wasn't so surprised that in Middle East women are playing paddle quite a lot. I think it's a sport because of what we talked about before. It's a sport that allows for people who are maybe not doing that much sport to have fun and to get engaged quickly. So it's probably difficult for them, I don't know, to play tennis because it's very difficult. You need to be very athletic, and so. But this is kind of a, let's say, social event where they can get engaged and do some exercise. And I think they did a good job by separating male and female courts, which make it easier for their culture to be able to play without these, let's say, religious compromises. I'd
Well,
say.
and in breaking of the stereotype, I played with Najwa in
Okay.
Saudi, in Riyadh, and it was with her sister and a few other friends of hers, and so it was a fully wonderful and open experience. And so it is happening, and that's the true joy. So anyone who wants to know a little bit more about it from the inside, go check out my interview with Najwa. But all right, so I want to focus on the last part here on the Olympics, because in the end of the day, this has always been a big topic for me. And there's lots of hype, but you spend a good amount of time deep diving into that. What is it going to take? And you're talking about the possibility of it being in Brisbane in 2032, where you need to have presence in 75 countries. The big rub seems to be, or at least the one that sticks out, is only two countries, Spain and Argentina. And I wanted to preface that and saying, well, the fact that there's only two countries that are dominant doesn't seem to stop table tennis, where we've had China win 24 of 28 golds since 1988. Badminton, where China has won 18 golds since 1992. Diving, where over half of medals since 2000, all half of medals since 2000 have been won by China. Nearly half of all medals for South Korea. Basketball, 19 golds for the USA. Women's ice hockey, only two countries have ever won gold, USA and Canada. So I have a list that goes on about this. So anyway, I'm just trying to, of course, I'm excited about the idea. How is it that those sports are allowed to do that with two countries or one? And paddle might be refrained because it only has Spain and Argentina.
Okay, there's several questions here. First, for me, ice hockey should be out of the equation because summer Olympics are much tougher than Winter Olympics, but the others remain. So I'm not betting against. So I'm not saying paddle won't make it. I'm just saying it's one of the difficulties that we see there. In these countries, so in these sports that you mentioned, countries have had the time for to have athletes who are competitive enough. The thing is, in padel, if you see the world team competition, you see that it's usually Spain and Argentina. And I was talking to an let's say investor or a businessman from the UK the other day, and he said, I mean, our best players have played for 4-5 years most, right? Except for you who lived in Spain, etc. Right? But so they haven't had the time. Like Spanish and Argentinian players are there since they were 4.
Chiquitos.
Chiquitos, exactly. So it's something that may be seen as a difficulty. I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm just saying that, so Padel has already 87 federation that signed up with the International Padel Federation. So that is no longer a reason because we already meet the numbers. I'm just trying to find why aren't we there yet? And that's one of the reasons. And the second reason I find, and we were talking about women before, is that women, padel is one of the sports where women represent a larger share of players. But when you go and check competitions, that doesn't remain. So women are playing a lot. I would say 50% of players probably are women, at least in Spain. But when you go to competitions, I don't know. I played my regional Campeonato de Catalunya regional championship last year, and there were 13 draws of men, and for women there was only 2, like main draw and second. And let me tell you more. I played, so the year before I had played second category, and I won quite easily because I don't have ranking at the time. I won quite easily. I didn't lose me and my partner, we didn't lose a set. And then we asked for a wild card last year, and then the first category is, so the step, it's very large. So women at a competitive level is also something that need to be taken into account.
That's very fair. Well, it does feel that there's another issue, which is the media, because what we see, and this is, I was chatting with Johannes Tomhev, who has Padel TV, is that in reality, people are more interested in playing than watching, as opposed to so many other sports where people are interested to watch but don't play, like football, calcio, or even tennis. It's a sport that people just, I'm surprised. Going back to another point just quickly, you did say about, in the UK, it's become more known. It's still a comment where at a dinner table or at a party, oh, I like playing paddle. Oh, I know about paddle. Like they jump up and say, I know about paddle. They don't play it necessarily, but I know my husband has played and he likes it. Or my daughter has heard about it, or that kind of a thing, where it's still not like, oh, well, I play too. Duh. But anyway, going back to the media story, we have 30 million odd players, half of which are women around the world watching. But the number of times that I can go to a court and play paddle, oh, did you see the shot by Galana in Bilbao or in Valladolid, which just happened? Who? What? No. So the knowledge of pro paddle amongst players in the UK is still very low. I know coaches who don't follow pro paddle. I mean, I find that that's almost a professional error not to know what's going on in the pro world. It should be part of your daily regimen to watch some pro paddle, to learn about it, what's going on, the new shots, the new tactics, and new partnerships and everything. But anyway, that's because I'm a little bit loco, as you know. But anyway, so what do you think about the media story for Olympics for paddle?
For me, 2 points here. One, I understand that there's some people who don't watch pro paddle because it's so far away from what they play that they don't recognize themselves. And sometimes when they tell me that, I say, oh, you need to watch women paddle, which is probably closer to what you do. But media, I mean, it doesn't. What are the sports that people watch? They play football, they watch football, probably basketball, tennis. No one watches golf that moves a lot of money. Uh, I mean, only people who play golf. And there's, I don't know. I do watch. I'm very local too, local in this case. I do watch athletics, athleticism, swimming, but gymnastics. But there's a lot of sports that are not watched and are Olympic. So I don't think, because like the Olympic spirit and peace and sharing and competition, gender, etc., I don't think is that much influenced by media. And the newest sports in last Olympics, one of them was skateboard. Who watches skateboard? So in my opinion, and it's mine, doesn't need to be the truth, is that media is not that relevant for the Olympic path track.
All right. Well, good. Good to hear. I really appreciate that. I am a last question for you. You've now become known as the writer, co-author of the Bible of Paddle, which is a pretty cool denomination. And congratulations for you for leading that, Elena. Where do you see the biggest opportunities and risks that aren't immediately obvious about this impressive growth that we're doing? What do you see as ups and downs that we might be faced with in the future?
So in terms of opportunities, I think, and from what I've seen, you need to be in a market a little bit before it really like growth, like really booms, let's say, or takes off. So for example, the companies that were investing commercially in France a couple of years ago or last year will have started seeing returns this year, and they'll continue seeing it. But I think it's the same in most market, that you can't arrive there once the game is happening. You need to arrive there a bit sooner so that you've got your established presence there. So that's first thing. Second thing is, and I have heard that a lot from growing markets, is that it's very difficult to find qualified paddle coaches or academies. So because that's scarce, it's probably that opens a real business opportunity. Be it creating coaching platforms where coaches may be able to relocate, or so being like a marketplace for coaches, for example, or even online training programs. I've seen some of those in Instagram, but kind of uh, one person, one man show or one woman show. Whereas these kind of platforms, I think, would need to be, let's say, properly done, developed. And on the risk side, I think that building a strong, broad player base is essential. So maintaining engagement across all age groups, so that it's not only a 30 plus male sport, and that moves out to women, kids, that will be the base for future generations. If the sport doesn't keep evolving to appeal these people or these other parts of the population, it may risk of reaching a plateau and never reaching real maturity.
Well, the counterexample I'm hoping is the intergenerationality of paddle. Whereas in tennis, if you're a 22-year-old and you're playing against your grandfather, not a lot of fun, especially if you're good, you know what I mean? Because you have to hit it directly to him, this and that. Whereas in paddle, I have played with grandchildren and grandparents, and we have had an absolute hoot. So a word to everybody who's a retired old man like me: get your children out there. and have some intergenerational fun. All right, well, Elena, that has been great fun. Love seeing your smile. Love having you on to talk about our mutual passion for paddle. Let's start with, how can anybody get their hands on this wonderful Bible of paddle?
Well, they just need to go to Playtomic's webpage, or maybe Google Global Padel Report Playtomic, and they'll find it there. You need to leave your name just for tracking purposes, but nothing else, and then you just download it and read it. It's a good read.
Indeed, it is. And if anyone wanted to reach out to you, Elena, is there a way that someone could do that, or is that just too much information?
I get reached like often, mostly through LinkedIn, or I think my email is in the report. I'm not sure, but otherwise, LinkedIn is a good way. I get a lot of messages and usually attend, and I have a conversation with potential investors and students that are doing work on paddle. So I'm happy to respond there.
Well, final word for the future of paddle, Elena. One word.
One word. How do you say? I wanted to say it in Spanish, like ilusión, meaning it's
Impressive.
Yeah.
Love it. Beautiful. Elena, muchas gracias.
Thank you for having me here.